Your call has been forwarded to voicemail.
Hi, this is Zoe Deutsch.
And Nick Robinson. Our brand new movie, Voicemails for Isabel, is all about those little moments that feel like the universe is looking out.
Feeling homesick, then your sister calls.
Hearing that perfect song exactly when you need it. Sometimes life rigs things in our favor, like learning about your new favorite rom-com, Voicemails for Isabel. Now playing only on Netflix.
This episode is brought to you by Fox One. Watch all 104 matches of the FIFA World Cup live in 4K for just $19.99 a month, with 3 days free. Build your own multi-view, choose up to 3 streams, and follow player spotlights. Stay on top of every moment with live stats, highlights, and instant replays. The FIFA World Cup, streaming live on Fox One. Offers are subject to change. See fox.com for complete terms and conditions.
Hello and welcome to Vulgar History, a feminist women's history comedy podcast. My name is Anne Foster, and today we are talking about slavery in the ancient Roman world with author Emma Southon, whose new book in America is called Not Built in a Day, but in the UK it's called Service. And it's the same book, just different titles, and what you're talking about is slavery in ancient Rome. Actually, can you give us the behind the scenes? Why does it have 2 titles?
It has 2 titles because this happened with my last book as well. I think that American publishers really, really loved the title "A Fatal Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum." Like, they just think it's unbelievably amazing. And so both times I've written, like, I've come up with a title and then they've gone, oh, could we have a title that's more in line with A Fatal Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, because we just really love that. And so we've had to go around in some circles to come up with a title that works. For this one, it was quite hard because we didn't want something that was, you can't really do like a pun title for something as serious as slavery. Like, you don't want to make it seem like we're going to be taking that on, like, not seriously. And so this one went through several rounds of like lists of ideas before Not Built in a Day was the kind of one that we all agreed on, that wasn't too horrific and wasn't too Latin and was kind of snappy enough that it worked for everybody. So yeah, I think that just American publishers really love the idea of a kind of snappy title, and British publishers just like, yeah, call it whatever.
What I want to tell the listeners is what I was telling you before, is what I would have called this book is You Wouldn't Want to Be a Slave in Ancient Rome, which is a series of children's books that we have in North America. At least when I was growing up, there's books like You Wouldn't Want to Build the Pyramids, You Wouldn't Want to Be on the Titanic, and it's just kids like picture books about like gruesome, awful things from history. And your book, I kept thinking of that. I'm like, this is just like that, but for grown-ups. I think in the UK, it's like Horrible Histories does a similar thing.
Which was very much like these are the gruesome parts of the, like, there were Rotten Romans was the Roman one, like gruesome Greeks and terrible Tudors and that kind of thing. So it'd just be like all of the gory bits and all of the like bits involving poo.
Exactly. Like chamber pot holding is, I'm sure. That is in your book, but that would also be in those children's books.
I toned that bit down as well. That was a longer passage originally.
You do say, I'm just remembering now in the introduction, you're like, there is going to be a lot of piss in this book. And I'm like, oh, no, there was.
Yeah, there is a lot of piss. It's surprising how much urine came up. I didn't expect that, but...
So we're going to talk about today, like, you've got so many examples of so many things in your book. And what I thought is can kind of like introduce the whole concept of slavery in ancient Rome to the listeners who might not know about this, is the way that it's sort of formed in response in some ways to some rebellions, these 3 major slave rebellions. And each time a rebellion happened, the Romans were like, okay, change course. How can we make this not happen again? Then there's another rebellion. You're like, oh, okay, we went too far. Let's go. Let's do it. And by the end of the 3rd one, they're like, we got it figured out. And it kind of stuck.
Yeah.
So can you explain the first rebellion and the incredible person at the head of it?
Yeah. So the first they're called the Servile Wars in Roman history, and they are these three massive rebellions that all happen basically in the aftermath of the destruction of Carthage and the massive expansion of Roman power, Roman military power into the east of the Mediterranean, which brings a huge amount of enslaved labor into the Roman economy and just fundamentally changes it. Like, this is the point at which the Roman economy stops being like a normal Mediterranean system that has enslaved people in it, but is largely, run on free peasantry and free labor, and then becomes as what we call a slave society, whereby slavery underpins the whole economy and underpins the entirety of how it runs. Like, it just cannot really function without slavery after this point. The three slave rebellions get seen as kind of teething troubles in a way. The first one happens in 135, and it happens in Sicily. The first two happen in Sicily. And the first one happens in response to basically extreme brutality. The Romans have only just really colonized Sicily. Like, it is still a fairly new Roman colony. And they have done what they always do, which is they've stolen all the land, they've divided it up amongst rich Roman citizens, like sold it off, and then they have started filling it with enslaved labor. It's one of the bread baskets of Rome, one of the earliest places where they are growing huge amounts of wheat and food, which they're then exporting to the cities, specifically to Rome.
And can I just say, just because I didn't know this context of it, that the enslaved labor that they have, the reason why they have so many people is because when they go to war and they capture a city, they take all the people in the city and enslave them. So they just have, it's not people necessarily who were born into this. It's people who 5 minutes ago were not enslaved and now are.
And a lot of them will be kind of craftsmen or just random inhabitants in the city. A lot of them will be soldiers who are captured in battle. And a lot of them will just be people potentially who were previously enslaved in Syria. But a lot of them are going to be free people who have been captured basically as booty or as loot from the wars that the Romans are now fighting kind of constantly. Like, that's all they're doing at this stage. The story of the First Servile War is that it focuses around a guy called Eunice, who is amazing. He is a Syrian. He is a flute player. He is considered to be a kind of religious figure, and he presents himself as a religious figure. And there are all these stories that he basically makes himself kind of semi-famous amongst the enslaved population in his area of Sicily, because he will go into trances and breathe fire and dance around and like give prophecies, basically. And people find this to be amazing. The Romans write about it.
I mean, who would not find this amazing?
Yeah. The Romans write about it in this way. They really want to like debunk it. So there's a Greek writer who writes about it who's like really goes out of his way to insist that he knows exactly how he was doing the fire breathing, and like really interrupts his own narrative to be like, he was doing it by holding like a burning walnut shell in his mouth, and then as he would breathe over the walnut shell and that would make flames come out of his mouth. I'm like, that is quite cool. That's also like, I couldn't hold a burning walnut shell in my mouth. So that's in and of itself quite a skill. But they just really want you to know that he's not really magic. But one of the prophecies is that he is one day going to be the king of Sicily. And so people, particularly the kind of person who owns him, the person who enslaves him, thinks that this is hilarious and is constantly bringing him out at dinner parties and forcing him to tell this story and be like, oh, you're going to be the king, are you? And everybody makes fun of him. And then they like will give him food and say, oh, remember me in the future when you're the king. Ha 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 ha. And then they send him back to the fields. But he gathers himself a reputation amongst his fellow enslaved people as somebody who is a wise man and a good advisor and a leader. And so there is an enormous rebellion that kicks off on a neighboring farm because the Roman citizens there, the enslavers, who are called Damphilos and Megla, are wicked, basically. They're evil people. They delight in tormenting the people that they enslave. They find it to be extremely fun to torture people. They refuse to fulfill what are kind of seen as their obligations. So they're not feeding people, they're not clothing people, they're allowing they're just kind of buying cheap labor and then setting them free into Sicily and leaving them to starve or to fend for themselves. And then at the same time, they are showing off their wealth. And so they will appear like riding around their estate while wearing like magnificent clothing and with kind of young, beautiful boys who are kind of dripping in gold. And when people are like we're freezing to death, we're starving to death, they will have them whipped for complaining, basically. So there is just extreme cruelty and extreme torture and neglect occurring, which drives the people who live on that farm to rise up. And they go to Eunice and say, do you think that we should kill them, basically? And he's like, yes, you should, but only if you do it right now. So they do, and they rise up. They manage to come together and almost immediately gather a very large group of people from surrounding farms who are experiencing similar circumstances of just being bought, enslaved, disfigured with tattooing, with branding, with whipping, with extreme violence and neglect, and who are fed up, basically, and who all, as soon as there is a kind of spark, they all come together and are able to basically rush the city of Enna and take it. Overnight, as far as the kind of narrative goes, with Eunice at their head, they manage to raise quite a significant kind of army of terrifying herdsmen, rush the city of Enna in Sicily, take it, and then start freeing people in the city as well, and taking their revenge upon the Roman citizens and the citizens of Sicily who they consider to have unfairly enslaved them and to have treated them with extreme cruelty. And within a couple of days, Eunice has been declared the king of Enna.
Like he said he would.
He said he would. And he has Damphilos brought to him and some of his friends in the forum. And he sits there like a king would, overseeing a city that he has taken. And he hands out his punishments. And in a kind of nice little narrative twist, he forgives all of the men who had given him treats or who had given him presents at the dinner parties where they were making fun of them. And he's like, you bought my favor in the past, so I will give you my favor now. And then he kills all the ones that don't. And so his prophecies come true. And he then is able to basically be the king of this, or declare himself the king of this part of Sicily for about 4 years.
What I found really remarkable, there's a lot remarkable about this actually, but I am obsessed with people minting coins as a political statement. Like, he is king long enough, he mints coins.
He does mint coins with where he calls himself the Basilas, and some it still exists. There's one in the British Museum which is not on display, which I find heartbreaking because it should be. And this is one of those situations where the Romans kind of they do take it seriously fairly quickly because they take a city. And so he is able to hold that city for quite a long time. There's another slave rebellion elsewhere in Sicily that rises up to meet him, that also takes another city. And for 3 years, there is like about half of Italy is in open warfare over the fact that these people basically just want to be free. There is an uprising amongst the free peasantry as well against Roman occupation of Sicily, as it still is at that time. And there are extremely hard-won battles. And eventually the Romans are only able to win through their, what I call sneaky fuckery, which is their what they do when they're not able to win with outright force. So there's a couple of sieges, and both of those sieges have to be won by them basically taking a prisoner, bribing that prisoner largely by offering him freedom, then sending him back in to basically open the gates or to betray some kind of opening into the city. And they're able to take both of the cities that Eunice is controlling through that method. One of the rebels, in a bit that I absolutely adore, apparently kills himself by just holding his breath.
Well, in front of everybody.
In front of everybody. Well, everybody just stands around and goes, well, I guess there's nothing we can do about this for like 8 minutes. I don't know. I just find that story really funny, like that he would just be holding his breath for ages. Eunice manages to escape from Anna and runs off to the mountains, where he is then hunted down. He takes his own life as well. And then the last kind of 500 to 1,000 of the rebels are rounded up and sent to Rome to fight in the arena, to be executed in the arena, whereupon they immediately kill themselves as soon as they are given weapons. And so the Romans are completely... It's kind of almost a moral success from the point of view of the enslaved, because they are unable to really they have nobody to show to kind of triumph over. They have nothing to put on display and say, look what we defeated. And the Romans would much rather have something that they can say, look at these guys, look how handsome and strong they are, and we defeated them anyway. But they are completely deprived of the ability to do that, because all of the rebels are like, no, I would rather die than be executed. But it is a 4-year war that comes about largely because the Roman enslavers were so cruel and so unbelievably... I'm trying to think of a word that's not cruel, but they just torment the people that they enslave to such a degree. They dehumanize them to such a degree that they're treating them as beasts. And they take away any sense of hope, any sense of the potential that this might be a finite condition, or that they might be able to improve their condition. And they treat them in the exact same way that they would treat cattle. And that is a large part of what drives this enormous rebellion. And it freaks the Romans out, because they are used to small rebellions, and particularly at this time, there's quite a lot of little ones where like an entire mine's worth of people will burst out, but they only will last a few days or a week or so, because generally when a rebellion breaks out, the Romans are able to send in a bunch of soldiers who scare everybody, they fall to pieces, and they're all slaughtered. And the Romans are able to be like, I did an overwhelming show of force and all is well. But this is the first time that they're not able to do that. And it kind of freaks them out. And the lesson that they learn from it basically is that you cannot just use brutality in order to keep enormous populations of enslaved people in line. Like when you are moving into this situation where you have so many enslaved people that they are outnumbering free people to this degree, in some, like the numbers that are thrown around in the Roman sources are always wild. They will always be like, one source says 17,000 and another source says 117,000. And you're like, well, that feels like a big jump. It just is whatever anybody feels like saying. But there's obviously a very, very large rebellion that occurs because they have treated humans as animals. And they learn pretty quickly that that cannot be the only form of control that is used when you are dealing with such huge numbers.
Am I remembering correctly, too, that another lesson they learned is if you're going to capture a city of people who all speak the same language, don't take all those people to the same place and enslave them all, because they all know each other and speak the same language and can talk to each other. Like, put people who speak different languages together. Like, don't just plant an entire city onto a farm.
Yeah. And that it is very helpful to have people who don't speak the same language, who don't have the same religion in common, because virtually all of the people, or large numbers of the people who are on Sicily at this time, have come from Syria, have come from North Africa, and all largely are worshipping the same gods in the same way, which is very different to how the Romans worship their gods, like a lot of ecstatic dancing and stuff. But it gives them something in common that they can converse about. And so you get people like Cato, the elder, who is about the same time saying, like, don't buy loads of people who all speak the same language, because they're going to talk to each other. And also they might have arguments about stuff that happened back in the homeland, and you don't want that. But yeah, they will start to talk about keeping people separate, keeping people deliberately confused, stopping people from having any kind of solidarity with one another, even if it's at the level of language.
So then some time passes, I'm not sure how much, and a similar thing happens also in Sicily.
Yes. So about 30 years passes. The next one is 104. The Second Servile War comes about because of a really specific weird thing that happens, which is basically a surfeit of hope, that the Romans at this time are fighting on multiple different fronts. And in particular, Marius, who is the consul 7 times, he's like the first like really big guy in Rome, like he's the proto Julius Caesar. He is fighting in Gaul and he's running out of men. And so he gets the Senate to ask a client king in Bithynia to send some more like conscripts, basically, to conscript some guys and send them to Gaul to fight to the Romans, because that's kind of part of the job of a client king, is to be providing resources for the Romans. And in return, they don't slaughter you all. But the king says, look, I'd love to, but I don't have any men left. Like between the conscriptions and the wars and the tax farmers who have been coming through, like everyone has been taken into slavery. I just don't have the population left. And so the Senate think that it would be a good idea to issue an edict and say, basically, anyone who has been enslaved, who is a member of a race that is now a client king, like if you are now in allyship with the Romans, then you can be free, without really thinking through how many people that is, and particularly in Sicily. And this edict is circulated in Sicily, and hundreds of people start walking off of the farms and houses where they have been enslaved and walking to the capital to talk to the governor and say, yo, I'm Bithynian, or I'm a member of another city that is now allied with the Romans, and here is my proof, and can I go free? And the governor is like, yeah, sure, go ahead, to about 100 people. And it's just like freeing people happily all day long for a couple of days, which obviously freaks out the people who have, as far as they're concerned, purchased labor, which is now being stolen from them. From the perspective of the enslaver, this is the state coming along and taking their property and freeing it without them having anything in compensation. And in much the same way as every slave society has ever freaked out about the loss of money over anything else, they freak out. And they basically force the governor to stop it. And as a coward, he just kind of shuts his doors and refuses to hear anybody else. But what happens is you've got hundreds and hundreds of people who have been told, oh, you're free now. Like all you need to do is get a stamp on a bit of paper and you're free. And then all of a sudden, a week later, they've been told, oh, no, actually go back into
just
slavery.
Kidding.
Yeah, just joking. Which doesn't go very well. It takes a couple of goes for that rebellion to really kind of kick off, because the Romans do manage to shut down a couple of attempts. But eventually there are 2 rebellions that rise in 2 different parts. And they are enormously successful. They come together pretty quickly and eventually are led by a guy called Athanasius, who, instead of taking a city, because they're not actually very successful of it, he sets himself up a maroon community. He builds his own city at a place called Triacola and sets himself up as king there. And they build their own supply lines. And this one, the Romans just don't take very seriously. By the time that is Salvius is the other guy, so it's Salvius and Athanasius, by the time those 2 have set themselves up in Triacola, the Romans are kind of like, oh, we just we put down all of those rebellions 20 minutes ago, and it's loads of effort to raise an army, because this is still the time of conscript armies. They don't have a standing army. So every time they need to do something, they have to raise conscripts and arm them and send them all out. And the governor is basically I can't really be asked. So he just doesn't for ages. like lets it happen. And by the time he does raise an army and try to do something about it, it's too late. Like they're too strong. They have built a really huge army of people from all over the city, all over the province, like all over the island are coming, because as soon as they have any hope, people just down tools and walk away, or murder their enslaver and walk away, which happens quite a lot. People are pouring into this maroon community, and they live there for like 3 years. And successive governors are basically unable to defeat them. They are unable to besiege them somehow, or they just can't be asked to besiege them properly. They refuse to meet in open battle, so they can't kill them. And it is not until they have to send a consul from Rome to come and really basically do the kind of warfare that they're used to doing against foreign enemies. So they have to put in a full siege and attempt to starve them into coming out into open battle. And when they do, it actually ends really cool because Athanasius and the consul fight in hand-to-hand combat and both injure each other brutally. But eventually the consul wins and Athanasius is killed. But they, and at that point, they're able to basically sack the maroon community that they have built. But it is a genuine and like almost successful attempt to build a community of people who have escaped slavery for people who have escaped slavery. And it lasts for, by Roman terms, quite a long time. Like 3 years is quite a long go. And Salvius is able to die as a free man. Like he is co-king. Dies 2 years in as king of Tricola and dies as a free king. And I think that's really cool that he manages to, basically, as far as he's concerned, he died successful. Yeah. Athanasius sadly doesn't. Athanasius gets killed. But the main lesson that they learn from that is that you can't just kind of hand out hope, basically. Because if you do go around telling people that, oh, you can be free just because of whatever, or if you offer people any kind of like hope that isn't attached to conditions, then there will be kind of runaway rebellion. What they end up with is you have to earn punishment. So punishment should be pegged to something specific, and you have to earn reward. Like that cannot just be given out because of like generic values. It should only be given out because you have specifically and individually earned it. And what that manages to do is atomize people into individuals within the system. So
they're not going to combine together because they think, well, I'm special.
Exactly.
I don't want to get it for everybody. Yeah. Exactly.
And then they can be like, oh, well, I am, if other people were better behaved, then they also could have the things that I have. And it separates people into individuals who have to work individually and who are not connected by shared background because they've been separated, and are not connected by anything other than kind of chosen family, basically. And therefore they can be like, oh, well, I'm earning my freedom, I'm earning my rewards, and you are earning your punishment, and you are earning the, you know, the whippings or the death or the horrible tortures. And if you had behaved better, that wouldn't happen to you. And it turns people into enemies of one another rather than comrades, or it removes the possibility of them being able to build any kind of community or solidarity as enslaved people, which is genuinely, they do this remarkably swiftly and impressively. And, you know, fairly not long after that, like a generation after that, you have Augustus making it the law that you can't manumit people for no reason. So you can't free people in your will, for example. You can't say, all of my secretaries will be free, or all of my hairdressers will be free. You have to do it by name and give a reason. So, which atomizes people even more into individuals. the more I read about this, the more I was like, oh, okay, so this is like the Roman version of modern capitalism. Like, you're not
just like union busting.
Yeah, basically. Like, you're not, if you're successful not because of any structural reasons, like you were born in the right place, or you were just happened to be really good looking, or it can only be because you worked the hardest at it, and you were the best at it, and you were the most well behaved, and you were the most friendly and the best slave. And if you are punished, then it is only because you were badly behaved. And there can be no structural reasons why you end up in a chain gang, or you end up imprisoned, or you end up not being freed. And it just was like, reading about it just made me feel so much like, oh, if you're not a billionaire, then it's kind of your own fault for sleeping more than 4 hours a day. Or if you would only hustle a bit harder and dunk your face in freezing water from a bottle every day, then maybe you too could have, passive income or whatever it is that people are always telling me that I need. And like the narrative of this is your fault if you are not succeeding, but this is entirely based on individual hard work if you are succeeding. There's nothing wider than that. Just was very familiar.
It is. It's incredibly familiar, and just to kind of see how, like you said, like how swiftly Rome was able to sort of like change their approach to slavery such that like people weren't exactly just divide and conquer.
And now for a quick advertising break. Starting or growing your own business can be intimidating and lonely at times. Your to-do list may feel endless with new tasks, and lists can easily begin to overrun your life. So finding the right tool that not only helps you out, but simplifies everything as a built-in business partner can be a game changer. For millions of businesses, that tool is Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the US. From household names like Gymshark, Rare Beauty, and Heinz, to brands just getting started. Shopify has hundreds of ready-to-use templates that can help you build a beautiful online store that matches your brand's style. And you can tackle all the important tasks in one place, from inventory to payments to analytics and more. No need to save multiple websites or try to figure out what platform is hosting the tool that you need. And if people haven't heard about your brand, you can get the word out like you have a marketing team behind you, with easy-to-run email and social media campaigns to reach customers wherever they're scrolling or strolling. Start your business today with the industry's best business partner, Shopify, and start hearing. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/realm. Go to shopify.com/realm. That's shopify.com/realm.
Starting a business can seem like a daunting task, unless you have a partner like Shopify. They have the tools you need to start and grow your business. From designing a website to marketing to selling and beyond, Shopify can help with everything you need. There's a reason millions of companies like Mattel, Heinz, and Allbirds continue to trust and use them. With Shopify on your side, turn your big business idea into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
Choice Hotels get you more of what you value. Here's a little tune to help you remember. Same drive, different day. Don't you wish you were getting away? Pack your bags and come on through. Texas, Ohio, Alaska, we're up there too. Comfort Inn, it's calling your name. Save on the stay. Oh, and free waffles are yours to claim. Well, I hope you like my little song. Book direct at choicehotels.com.
Teens share everything. That may include the bacteria that can cause meningococcal disease known as meningitis. Even if your teen's been vaccinated in the past, they could still be missing meningitis vaccinations. Ask your teen's doctor or visit meningitis.com today. Sponsored by GSK.
And we're back.
And yet, there's still one more major slave rebellion, perhaps the best known because it's led by a certain person called Spartacus.
Called Spartacus, our good for everybody's best friend Spartacus. This is the only one that happens on mainland Italy. It is one of the most stressful things that happens on mainland Italy. And it happens another 30 years later. So it happens in the 70s BCE. At the same time that all of the civil wars are just we've just had one civil war between Sulla and Marius, which ended in 80. We're building up to the next one, which is going to kick off in about half a generation. And down in Capua, there is a gladiator school, and one day a group of gladiators bust out of it. And there's about 70 of them is kind of the agreed number. They steal a load of weapons off of travelers, and they run up to the top of Vesuvius, where they hang out as a bandit gang. And there are lots of different stories about Spartacus and where he comes from and who he is. They're kind of two strands of narrative about him. And one strand is, they all agree he's Thracian, which is kind of Bulgaria, where Bulgaria is now. They all agree he's Thracian. They all agree he was a soldier who was captured. One strand says that he was a soldier who was allied with the Romans and then betrayed them and became a bandit and killed loads of Romans. And he was captured and put into the gladiator school because he was so wicked and evil. And that's why he ended up rebelling and killing loads of Romans, because he was so wicked and evil. And the other strand says that he fought against the Romans and was surprisingly Greek, which means civilized for a Thracian, and was actually very clever and good. And he was put in the gladiator school because the Romans are so kind of wicked and bad. And it was very unfair that he was there. And that explains why he was so successful, because he was surprisingly Greek. Because a barbarian could never be so successful. He would have to be civilized in some way, or else he'd never beat the Romans, obviously. But he basically is running a sort of bandit gang on the top of Vesuvius, and a small, I say small, like 2,000 men are sent initially to try and stop him. And he is able to outwit them, basically. He, at the time, this is like 100 years before the big Vesuvius eruption. So Vesuvius is a lot taller and a lot more difficult to access than it is now. There's basically only one path up and down it. And so the soldiers, the Romans, camp at the bottom of the path, and they're like, well, we'll just wait until they come down. We'll just starve them out. But what Spartacus does is he weaves ropes from vines, and they basically abseil down the back of the mountain. So they rappel down the back of the mountain and sneak around the back of the Roman forces and surprise them and defeat them while they're all looking in the wrong direction, which immediately freaks the Romans out a little bit, but also really thrills like everybody in the surrounding area. So everybody who is not a Roman, like this is not that long after there have been wars over who gets to be a Roman citizen and whether people in mainland Italy count as Roman, or whether they have any access at all to Roman privileges. And so they're like, being a Roman still kind of feels a bit invasive to the people of southern Italy. And so loads of people in southern Italy are like, brilliant. The Romans have lost. Love this. Do not like those northern guys. And people start kind of flooding to join Spartacus. And he builds an army with two other guys who end up being his co-generals called Onesimus and Crixus, out of people who are fleeing slavery in the surrounding area, because this is also a big agricultural area, but also free peasantry who have been massively disenfranchised by, once again, the Romans buying up all of their land and then farming it with enslaved labor rather than, and disenfranchising them completely from their land. And they then spend quite a long time just kind of harrying around southern Italy. So they, much like any army, they sack cities, they fight Romans, they fight, there's all kinds of like almost comedic events. Like there's a bit where they almost capture a Roman praetor while he's in the bath and he's naked, and he has to like flee naked into, just escapes the capture, being captured by Spartacus by like mere minutes. But they do manage to capture his horse, and then Spartacus rides like the general's horse around, and like various humiliations basically that they inflict upon these Roman generals who are supposed to be the most beloved by the gods, the most adored by everybody. Once they have got a fair amount of actual weaponry, like when they're starting off, there's these stories of them using like literal sticks and weaving shields like out of vines and hardening them, like they're having to make their own weaponry. But once they have managed to capture enough stuff, they then decide that they're going to make a run for it out of Italy. And they go up to the Alps, kind of harrying all the way, and where they are met by the governor of Transalpine Gaul, who is supposed to be able to stop them. He has this enormous army. He's got a proper trained Roman army, and they defeat him. At this point, they've beaten quite a lot of Romans, and like, proper Roman troops. And the Senate and people of the city of Rome have started to get genuinely quite stressed about it. They start to believe that Spartacus is going to come to Rome and sack them. They start to believe that all he wants is to murder them all and that he hates the Romans, and all kinds of stories start spreading about how barbaric and wicked he is. Weirdly, it's kind of like, it's a fascinating insight, I think, into Roman psychology. Like, one of the worst things that they can say about him is that he holds gladiatorial games and forces Romans to fight to the death as gladiators. And you're like,
I love this detail, though. This is like,
that's what you were doing to him.
Yeah.
I don't.
That's the thing that out of everything, they're just like, wait a minute, he's making us be gladiators. Like, one step too far. Step too far.
It's too far, and they cannot. Like, this to them is so dishonorable and disgusting that he does this, and he does this like as a funeral because Crixus dies, and he does this as part of a like funeral for him, and they're like so disgusted that he would make Romans fight as gladiators, and you're like, you have such a weird worldview that you just cannot see that you are the same as other people, but okay. And it then kind of descends sort of into chaos, to be honest. Like, as far as I can tell, Spartacus really wants to get out of Italy. Like, he personally seems to be trying to get out in any way, shape, or form. And the rest of his army are like, what if we just kept fighting Romans forever? Because this is really fun. And so they, for whatever reason, do not cross the Alps. They turn around and go back down again. And they go right the way down to the Boot and try to get into Sicily. But they don't have any boats. So there's like this whole thing with them trying to like float over on barrels that doesn't work out. At this point, the Romans have realized that this actually is a proper situation. Like, for a long time, the Senate did not want to send senatorial resources there and like standing legions or experienced legions, because it's extremely dishonorable to them to be fighting gladiators. Like, even though Spartacus never fought as a gladiator, as far as we know, and it was a soldier for most of his life, like the fact that he had been a gladiator is so dishonorable that they just won't fight him. And it is kind of like a stain on them to be engaged in battle with him. So they just won't put the resources in. And they think it's kind of funny for a while. And then they think it's horrifying. And then eventually they allow Crassus, so the kind of richest man in Rome, Crassus, who is at the time is coming up to being in the first triumvirate, where he kind of agrees with Pompey and Julius Caesar that they will share power amongst themselves. And he manages to get them to give him a kind of special commission. He raises an army. He terrifies that army by immediately getting them to decimate each other. And then he traps Spartacus down in the Boot of Sicily. So he manages to break through, and then they chase each other all over Italy for like 6 months until he is finally defeated in battle, because there is a threat that Pompey is going to come and join in. And Pompey is like the big bad at this point. But it is like 3 years of Spartacus running around Italy with a huge army, constantly being successful, constantly being a visible sign that the Romans can be beaten. Like a really close to home visible sign that the Romans can be beaten, and they can be beaten by people who are not kings, who are not like magnificent foreigners, but who are what they consider to be the lowest of the low. I mean, it's incredibly humiliating. And so, according to one source, when he is finally beaten, when they finally take everyone prisoner, Spartacus is never found. He dies in battle, and his body is vanished. But all of the survivors are captured, and 6,000 of them are crucified every 30 meters along the Via Appia between Capua and Rome. So there is a huge, basically, forest of crucified bodies for what is kind of a 3 or 4 day ride or journey into one of the main thoroughfares in Italy. And they make a real statement about how any rebellion will be dealt with at this point. And that is the final large-scale rebellion of enslaved people. There is, after that, you see nothing in terms of any kind of organized rebellion or organized revolt that happens on anything larger than 2 or 3 people running away or 2 or 3 people murdering one person. Like, there is no attempt to escape en masse, no attempt to create maroon communities, no attempt to change the system. It becomes so embedded after Spartacus, and the system becomes so sophisticated that it ends any sense that there could be large-scale change.
And this is I'm going to say one of the most action-packed parts of your book, and that's part of why
it is.
Well, because it's like, this is where there is kind of hope. There's a chance that maybe there's going to be a way for people to defeat them. But eventually, the next part of your book, for when people read it, like, gets into like, okay, like, now that slavery is just, it's the oxygen that they breathe. This is just what life is. How does it function and how does it work? And and it does further, like, their society functions on slave labor for, I don't know, hundreds of years.
Until their society doesn't exist anymore. Like, it is, there's still slavery. There is still large scale mass slavery at what we would consider to be the end of empire. Like, so when you're getting into the 5th century and you're talking about like the period when Rome is sacked, for example. So like 410 is the big sack of Rome. So 480 years after Spartacus. And you have people like Melania the Younger, who is alive at that time, who decides that she's going to sell off lots of her property, and she frees 8,000 people that she personally owns, and really pisses off her family for doing that. And that's like not everybody that she owns. That's just some of her property. And so you still have like mass enslavement on a staggering scale, both domestically and agriculturally, and in every part of the like bureaucracy of empire, like well into what we would consider to be the end of the Roman Empire.
And so just a question I want to ask you, because this comes up several times in your book, is that there has been in the recent past an assumption that like, well, slavery wasn't so bad in ancient Rome.
Yeah.
where does that idea come from?
The idea comes from the fact that for a long time, particularly in like English language scholarship in the America and Britain, the idea of Rome has been so glorious. Like, both the British Empire and the American Empire have been based on Rome, like explicitly based on the idea that Rome is glorious and we are the new Rome. They are perfect, rational, idealized empire that brought civilization to the barbarians. And now we, first the British and then the Americans, are the inheritors of that. And so the whole of ancient history and classics was taught as teaching people how to run an empire. And so for a large part of those empires, slavery was a part of it. And so they were like, well, we're doing slavery correctly. So the Romans, we're doing it exactly like the Romans did, basically. And the idea that the Romans could have been doing anything incorrectly was kind of unthinkable for such a long time, because Romanness was so core to what power was, what good power was, what imperial power was at a time when imperial power was an unqualified good. Like up until World War II, like the idea of being a civilizing imperial power was an ideal. It wasn't like, since then, we've come to the conclusion that actually maybe that was horrific, and that eradicating entire cultures and enslaving entire cultures was actually quite bad. But for such a long time, that really was considered to be good. And so the idea that slavery could be bad just couldn't cross people's minds. So they had to be like, oh, well, the Romans had slavery, but it was a fine kind of slavery. Like it was an egalitarian kind of slavery. And it was, they offered freedom. So obviously everybody must have been freed. And it was like, what's the worst thing that could happen? You could get beaten a little bit. And the idea of the Roman was so glorious and so perfect that it was just impossible for them to imagine them as brutal, to imagine them as, because then they would have to see themselves as brutal. They would have to see themselves as cruel. They would have to see themselves as dehumanizing and doing something that is, an evil thing to do. And people for such a long time couldn't see themselves as doing that. And it's only with the kind of gradual crumbling of imperialism as something that people want to be doing, or at least the growth of the criticism of imperialism and colonialism, that we're able to say, actually, no, that is an evil, that to take a person and to turn them into property, that to take a person and like, even if you're going to dangle freedom in front of them at any point, any kind of enslaving people, turning a person into a not human and into a commodity is an evil thing. It's a really relatively new thing to be thinking.
What that brings to mind for me is one of my comfort TV shows that I like to rewatch is I, Claudius, the 1970s BBC series.
A great series.
And I love it. I love it so much. But I know in some of the like behind the scenes stuff, some of the actors have said like when they went in to act, the actors who were playing like the imperial family, and there's like extras who are there being the slaves, like being the enslaved characters. And the actors were like, someone would bring them a cup and they would instinctively be like, oh, thank you. And the director's like, no, don't do that. I had to cut down on just like the basic human decency that just comes intrinsically to anyone.
Yeah.
Where the directors like treat them like furniture. And it was a real challenge actually for the actors to not, like when someone brings you the chalice of wine, don't even look at them.
Yeah,
like, that
you
was
just
actually
accept
hard
it.
for these professional actors because like, we were just over there having a coffee together, me and this person, this actor, and it's like, well, treat them like a chair.
Yeah, like they're not a person right now. Yeah.
Yeah, so just think about like the level of dehumanization, and that's just actors portraying it, but like what it was actually like.
Yeah. The thing that always staggers me, and it still does, even though I spent like 2 years doing this book and have been studying the Romans forever, is the basic level of quite extreme violence that they would mete out against enslaved people, just as a basic, and like the sheer humiliation and like powerlessness of like at any minute you can just be punched in the face. And like, there's a medical writer called Galen who is he was like Marcus Aurelius's like private doctor, and he wrote this whole thing about anger and how anger is bad for your soul, in which he just lists like, he's like, oh yeah, as a doctor, and my father had this too, you're always seeing people come in because they've hurt their hand because they punched a slave, and his advice is that you shouldn't just punch people in the mouth if you're angry at them. You should wait and calm down and then get the whip and whip them instead, which is kind of worse. But
like your hand won't have this.
But your hand and your soul won't be damaged by that. And he tells, and you're just like, oh, so it's common just to like be mad and to just punch somebody, or to stab them with a stylus, which is something that he says he sees all the time. Or he tells this horrific story about a friend of his, and they're traveling across Greece, and somebody can't find some luggage, like a bit of luggage has gone missing. And so his friend grabs a sword in its sheath and hits two enslaved men over the head so hard that the sword cuts through the scabbard and into their head. And then he is like, oh, I feel kind of bad about that. And he just goes on ahead because he can't deal with the consequences of what he has done, which is almost kill two people because some luggage went missing. And Galen's takeaway from this is like, he lost his temper and that shows that his soul is in a bad way. And my takeaway is like, is this common? Like, that you can just like, these people are just doing their job and a bit of luggage has gone missing, as it sometimes does, or like maybe it's just at the bottom of a pile, and they're like either permanently disfigured, they're certainly going to be scarred if they survive this. Like the potential for the wreckage that can be caused by, head injuries of that kind are astonishing. Like what happens to those guys? And just the base level of violence that is expected and is considered to be normal and average and everyday that is meted out to enslaved people is just so horrific to me that you can just be doing your best and you can experience like the humiliation and the sadness of just that somebody can treat you like that and there is nothing you can do about it. I just think must have been almost one of the worst parts of being enslaved to the Romans. Like a lot of the 20th century writers will say things like, oh, the worst that can happen is you get beaten with rods. Being like, no, it isn't. Like, firstly, the worst that can happen is you can get killed. But also like just that routine, like slapping and hitting and kicking and being treated like furniture, like it's soul destroying for everybody involved in it.
And your book is called Not Built in a Day, but like this is like the entire basis for Roman society.
Yeah.
What this level of enslavement, like there wouldn't have been like the quote unquote like great things that Roman society did if it wasn't all these effectively invisible people.
Yeah. There's no empire without them. Like they do everything, like the whole of the bureaucracy, the whole of the army runs, enslaved people cannot be soldiers, but soldiers can be professional soldiers because they have armies of enslaved people who are doing all of the bureaucratic work, who are doing all of the like everyday work. Like soldiers can own enslaved people, and they do have enslaved people in every army camp. And there's also imperially owned and people who are owned by cities and people who are doing all of the labor that allows Rome to be as glorious and as great as it is. Like you don't get Senecas and Ciceros and glorious palaces and colosseums and whatnot without just this mass of enslaved labor that can be used and worked through and like ground into dust.
So your book came out in the UK first.
Yes.
And now it's coming out when this airs. It's now available in North America as well.
Yeah.
And how can people keep up with the various events and things that you have going on?
Yes, so you can go to emmasouthon.com, which is not spelled like you think it is, but if you type in any version of that, then you should find me. Or you can go to my podcast, which is called History is Sexy, and find all of the links there. Or you can follow me on Instagram at Emma Southon and see all of the things that I'm up to. And also pictures of my cat.
Which is important. Your cat, who's called Livia.
Yes, she is. And she's a tiny little princess.
Speaking of I, Claudius, like Livia is the best character. And so, yeah.
And she lives up to her name, I think. She is also very imperious.
Familiar to me with my cat, who has been here throughout this recording as well.
And I've enjoyed every minute of it.
Well, thank you so much, Emma, for joining me to talk about your book. I think it's I just want to let listeners know too, like, because I've read it. It's, you are so knowledgeable about Roman history and I am not, but you write books in a way that it's understandable to me. So I want people to know that you're really holding people's hands and explaining things.
I do my best to be like, this is what happened. There's like a glossary. It's got a timeline, there's a map. So even if you don't really know anything about the Romans, hopefully you should be able to follow what's going on. Like you don't need to know who everybody is or know loads about the Romans. I want it to be accessible to everybody. It shouldn't just be for people who already have like really entrenched opinions about Cicero.
But for those people, Like there's some good Cicero slander in your book.
There is. Yeah, I do real slag him off. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. This is a really fun conversation.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I need to, again, just shout out how much I appreciate Emma Southon. Her books were really influential to me when I was developing my voice as a historian who also tells jokes. You should read all of her books, but especially her new one, Not Built in a Day, which is available now in North America. In the UK, it's called Service, Servus. And you know what? If you really like what Emma has to say about my book, she wrote a really nice blurb about my book, which is called Rebel of the Regency. And you can get that basically anywhere. It's available everywhere. Go to rebeloftheregency.com to find all the links of how and where you can buy it from. Actually, it's currently a deal on Amazon Prime Days, so you can get it for extra discount at the moment if you buy it from Amazon. Anyway, the cover of my book has a quote from Emma Southon on it saying how good the book is. So who would know better than her what books are good? Anyway, rebeloftheregency.com is where you can get my book, or get a little discount on it at Amazon Prime Days until June 26th. I also want to mention we have a beautiful brand partner who is Common Era Jewelry. And I like to shout them out when we're doing episodes like this about the ancient world. So Common Era Jewelry is an American-based company. It's a small woman-owned business by my friend Tori, is the person who designs everything. She has a really small team who she pays really well, who makes all the jewelry. And so their jewelry is inspired by ancient Rome and other ancient cultures. And so if you're a Rome aficionado, like Emma is, you might enjoy getting some pieces from Common Era Jewelry. They make pendants and rings with images on them, both of famous women from the Roman era, like Cleopatra and Agrippina, as well as jewelry based on pieces found in archaeological digs, but reimagined for modern times. So their most recent collection on Common Era is called Fragments, which is inspired by kind of the pieces of art that are left behind. So when you go into museums or galleries, there are cases filled with broken things. These are fragments, pieces of larger pieces of art, but this is just all that survived. So these fragments, jewelry pieces are inspired by these. So for instance, there is the Hound pendant, which is inspired by a fragment that showed just like a dog, a gorgeous little Roman era dog that somebody loved so much that they put them on their artwork. Anyway, you can get that in a beautiful pendant, as well as the other pieces from Common Era. You can get their pieces. Most of them are available in solid gold as well as in more affordable gold vermeil. And Vulgar History listeners can always get 15% off all items from Common Era by going to commonera.com/vulgar. or use code VULGAR at checkout. And also, remember to listen to my new podcast I'm doing with my friend Gina Berry, where speaking of Rome, speaking of Spartacus, as we were in this episode quite a bit, we're doing a TV recap podcast called Nefer TV, Nefer TV. You can follow it wherever you get your podcasts. And Gina and I are discussing, we're going episode by episode through the TV show Spartacus, Blood and Sand, which I've never watched before and which Gina has watched a bunch of times. So we're bringing different and complementary energy into these recordings. It's a really good time. So you should listen to that as well. Just look up Nefer TV, Nefer TV, wherever you get your podcasts from, wherever you're listening to this right now. Just look it up. We're there. We also have a new Instagram that's Nefer TV podcast. So you can, like and follow us there as well. We will be back next week with a brand new episode of Vulgar History featuring a very special guest who hasn't been on before, but I think you're going to all recognize her from her own social media presence. And until then, my friends, keep your pants on and your tits out. Vulgar History is researched, scripted, and hosted by Anne Foster. Editor is Christina Lumagi. Theme music is by the Severn Duo. Vulgar History artwork by Karen Moynihan. Social media videos by Magdalena Denson. Transcripts of this podcast are available at vulgarhistory.com by Aveline Malik. You can get early ad-free episodes of Vulgar History by becoming a paid member of our Patreon at patreon.com/AnneFosterWriter. Vulgar History merch is available at vulgarhistory.com/store for Americans and vulgarhistory.redbubble.com for everyone else. Follow us on social media at Vulgar History Pod. Get in touch with me at vulgarhistorypod@gmail.com.
This podcast is brought to you by Carvana. Selling your car should feel like one less thing on your list, not one more. With Carvana, it is. Just go to Carvana.com, enter your license plate or VIN, and get a real offer down to the penny. No back and forth, no surprises, just an experience you can trust. Like your offer? Accept it. Schedule pickup, and we'll come to you with a check in hand. Your car, your timeline, your terms. Visit Carvana.com to sell your car today.
Carvana.
Pickup fees may apply.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
The war is over, and both sides lost. Kingdoms were reduced to cinders, and armies scattered like bones in the dust. Now the survivors claw to what's left of a broken world, praying the darkness chooses someone else tonight. But in the Shadow Dark, the darkness always wins. This is old school adventuring at its most cruel. Your torch ticks down in real time, and when that flame dies, something else rises to finish the job. This is a brutal rules-light nightmare with a story that emerges organically based on the decisions that the characters make. This is what it felt like to play RPGs in the 80s, and man, it is so good to be back. Join the Glass Cannon podcast as we plunge into the Shadow Dark every Thursday night at 8 p.m. Eastern on youtube.com/theglasscannon, with the podcast version dropping the next day. See what everybody's talking about and join us in the dark.